I find it very interesting that scientists and philosophers will often debate on whether they believe in free will. I thought we try to stay away from beliefs and we try to find things that have evidence. At least in science, it seems to be that usually the methodology is to try to disprove something, and if you can't disprove it, if you tried every single way that you can think of and everybody else has to try to disprove something, then that kind of leads to the idea that it is true, or that it leaves credence to the opinion that it is true. But when discussing free will, it seems that they discuss evidence and then talk about how they believe it, instead of just talking about the belief, let's just go where the evidence follows. And so, where is the evidence that there is a choosing aspect of the human mind? To me, it seems a lot more logical that the brain makes shortcuts based on previous input and stimulation from before that becomes ingrained in behavior. Becomes an ingrained behavior. So later on, the brain uses its heuristic to make a choice. The consciousness that is inside us is not the one that's choosing; it is the observer of the brain settling into a state of, this is what the path of action. There is no choice. There is only the recognition of the path of action afterwards. At least that's what evidence that I've seen suggests to me. And I try to stay away from the idea of believing in a metaphysical, even though I love discussing philosophy, metaphysics, magic, religion. I love all that stuff. But where is the evidence for that? Because with all these things that people try to use to break out of the idea of determinism, they lead themselves back into determinism the minute that they, admit that we are influenced by our environment, and that just because the universe is hyper complex and we can't predict the choice that's made doesn't mean that there is a free will that chooses it. It only shows that there is hyper complex structures of influence that affect entities, and then through those effects cause us to also create effects. Where's the evidence for a chooser? Where's the evidence for this soul? How much does a soul weigh? Show me the evidence for your metaphysical beliefs. And maybe I'll think you're right. But I'm not going to believe you, because that's dangerous.